show where I try to educate real stories.
Thank you for watching Truth and Justice with Vivian King. I have another exciting episode tonight with Miss Tracie Brown. She told a story 2 weeks ago, June 21st, 2023. And today she told us about being a police officer, getting in trouble with the law, and winding herself in prison. Wow, this is a story where we want to educate you about the criminal justice system through people's stories, people who've actually experienced problems in the criminal justice system. I have my steady and reliable co-host, Mr. Danny Sneed, here tonight. Danny, say hi.
My smile is my style. So can I highlight something?
Yes, sir, you can.
So Tracie's story comes from the vantage point from badge to bars
to purpose.
To purpose.
To purpose, yes,
so
right.
So set it up like that.
That's right. And let me just say this. I love this. You can't see this, but she has a T-shirt on. Tracie has a T-shirt on that has her former HPD badge number. Mm-hmm. And then it says from badge 6197 to bars, her TDC number, Texas Department of Corrections 1667060 to purpose. And now she's living in her purpose. And we're very proud of her. But we want to know about the criminal justice system. And this is like, this is just her perspective. I'm not telling her what to say. I'm not editoring it. I'm not editorializing it. I'm not doing anything. She's just telling her story, and hopefully we learn a lot. So you gave us a really gut-wrenching story last week, but now this week we want to start from you becoming a police officer. You went to college, played basketball, and let's go with being a police officer.
Okay, so I was asked to apply for the police department through a friend of mine who knew a officer who's working in recruiting, and I told him no. And I think the last time we talked, I told you that someone broke into my apartment and a young man attacked me.
Tried to rape you?
Yeah, tried to rape me, and I fought him off, and that was the call. The next day I made the call to go to the police department. So
now, how did that almost being raped experience, because you said you had to really fight this dude, right?
Yeah.
Like you had to fight him like a man, but he didn't realize he was coming in on somebody that was 5'10" and strong.
Yeah, and I worked out all the time. Yeah, I was playing semi-pro basketball at the time. And so
you were stronger than the average, stronger than you look.
Yeah, I was stronger than I look. But
I bet you're stronger than you look now.
I don't know. Mentally, I am. I hope. Yeah, but I gotta get back in shape like I used to be. But it's okay.
All right, you look strong.
Yeah, thank you.
But we found out that this was a young man that kind of wasn't wrapped too tight.
Yeah.
And he was mental,
emotional problems
with his mother, and he lived in your apartment complex, and
upstairs.
He was watching you.
Yes, he lived right upstairs from me, and he was watching me. The police officer showed up, told me that this is what he told them, that he'd come down every day and press my window and would just press and push, and then finally he got it to move, because the lashes that they go down and go up, he said if you press and push, I'm not trying to tell anybody committing crimes, I hope people got locks on the windows, but if you press and push enough, it will eventually slide up. And so that's what happened. And he wasn't.
But I wonder how a teenager knew that.
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know.
I can speculate.
A teenager?
Well, you know what? When you get locked out the house, you have to figure out how to get back in the house.
Yeah, but that's a house. This is an apartment.
No, well, my own place. Like, cause Mama used to like.
Oh, you were bad then?
No, I stayed out. Look, true story. I stayed out past curfew. So when you stay out past curfew, she's not mad. You just have to sleep in the car that night. So I would leave the window, Jimmy, and so my mother figured out I was doing it. I had to wake my little brother up. Open the window. Open the window. He was complicit. Both got beat to death.
Good. Anyway.
So anyway, with that happening, this young man ended up turning himself in. The cops saw him running to the police car, and he said, "Y'all looking for me?" And they drove him back to the apartment where I was standing outside, and they was like, "Is this the guy?" And I was like, "Yes." And so they explained everything to me. He was upset with his mom. He was going through some issues with his life or whatever, and he was just gonna take it out on you. And so the next day, I was able to move into another apartment.
Did he go to jail?
He went to juvenile, and he was released
to his mother.
to his mother.
To the person that he hated, or
Yes.
that was
Released
being
back.
mean to him.
Yes, yes. And my understanding, I heard later that he got probation or something. It wasn't anything that was major, you know. So
Did you keep up with that kid to know what happened to him?
I did not, but I know his name this day. I never call it right, you know, so I wouldn't do that
Yeah,
to
don't do
him.
that to him,
But I'm just saying, I know his full name to this day.
Mm.
And you know, I'm just hoping that he, you know, that he's not, you know, victimized anybody else or anything like that. I'm just hoping that didn't happen anymore for him.
I need to look that up.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
tell me. So let's get back. So after you were almost raped by
Mm-hmm.
a kid, now was he tall as you?
Yeah, he was taller than me. He was probably like 6'1".
Oh,
6'2",
okay. He was a
somewhere
tall
in there.
teenager. He was about.
That's
probably
why I thought when
16.
he was on top of me, I thought he was somebody. I thought he was an older guy, and that's why that's why I started praying like I know I'm about to die, because I'm finna get shot or stabbed. I was just waiting for one of the injuries to happen. I was just waiting, but I was closing my eyes and I was praying.
But like, were you in the bed when he was on top?
no,
of you?
I was in the corner.
Oh, okay.
When he came to my bedroom door, he dove on me and we hit the floor. And the wall is here, the bed is here, and he's on top of me, and I'm like we're going at it. And so, you know, and I just felt like I just started thinking myself like, okay, God, I'm about to come to heaven. I'm just asking for forgiveness. I'm serious. I was thinking this
I
in
know
my
it.
mind.
I bet I
and I
would've
was
too.
like, because I'm screaming help and nobody's hearing me. And so that's when the point I just went into closing my eyes and I just said, I know I'm about to die. I know I'm going to get shot or stabbed because I'm fighting too much. And you know, I was here, you shouldn't fight. But that's not what I'm going to do. I'm not going out like that. So we're going to fight to the end. Right. And so, and when he started touching me in a place where I knew that I said, okay, I know this is where this is going. And that's when I closed my eyes and started my hand touched an old phone that was right there, an old hard phone, and I just grabbed it and I just hit him upside his head like this. And when I hit him, he shook. And I got my hands up under him and I pushed him up and we just both stood up together. And so I just said, you came into the wrong room tonight. I did just like this right here. I did cuss, but I ain't gonna say it on the show.
So you came into the wrong.
Yeah, so I ain't gonna tell you what I
How'd
said.
you get him out of there?
Once he dove me again, I just started hitting like everything that I had. Like, you know, I'm from South Memphis. I grew up fighting, and everybody know me from South Memphis knows I should fight. I'm a fighter. So I started hitting him and everything, and then he just said,
This too much. He said, this
yeah,
is too much.
he said that, but he said something else, and then he just pushed off on me and ran out the door.
Like, you,
Like,
And
this
so
is
here
too
I'm
much.
running.
So he didn't have a weapon.
He didn't have a weapon, thank God. And so I ran, he running out the door, and I'm running to the kitchen to find a knife or anything, you know, and I get a knife, and by the time I get a knife, I'm running at the door. He runs out. I'm thinking he's finna take off down the street. He runs straight upstairs. I said, oh my God.
You didn't recognize that to be the boy that lived upstairs?
I never seen him because I was a substitute teacher back then. So in the morning I get up and leave. I would go down to the fun day after work. You know, a lot of us used to go down and play. A lot of girls still go down there and play at the fun day. And I used to play down there all the time. By the time I come home, it's nighttime. And I was still playing semi-pro basketball. So we were traveling and everything. So I wasn't paying attention to my surroundings like that. I never saw this kid, never saw his mom. And when he ran upstairs, she was coming out the door. What have you done? What the F have you done? And I just said, ma'am, he just tried to rape me. And she said, you get out of here. I hate you. Get out of here. You're not my son. And so he took off. And I guess I ran back in the house. So I'm trying to lock the door now. So,
Right.
And then I'm calling 911. And so it may have been about 7 minutes or something later, maybe, and here it comes HPD riding around with this person in the back. And they said he flagged him down, said, I'm who you looking for. And so, yeah. And so,
Wow.
so after that, I decided to call the police department, called the recruiting, the guy who I knew through a friend, said, hey, where do I go get the application? You know, you asked me 3-4 times. I've said no. Today I'm saying yes. I'm going to get me a gun because I didn't know how to use a gun. Knew nothing about guns. I wasn't raised like that. Just raised with these hands, and you know, and so end up, like I said, I showed up at the police department. The young lady that was working, she said to get on the scale. You know, you have to take your shoes off when you first walk in the door. She said, get on the scale. Got on the scale. I was 14 pounds overweight. I talked about that the last time, and I was like, overweight? I said, I lift weights, I work out. And so she said, well, then you just have to come back in a year. I said, a year? So I was like, okay. So I'm getting my stuff together, walking out. And the guy who's a recruiter walks out. He sees me leave. He said, where's she going? I said, she said, I have to come back in a year. I'm 14 pounds away. He said, no, hold on. And he called her to the back. She came back and said, come back here. We're going to continue with your application. She said, he explained to us that, you lift weights and you play. But I said, yeah. So she said, so just go get a skin fold test. So where they check your skin, your body weight and everything like that. And like I said, the last time I went, at first she had said, don't worry, but she said, don't worry about losing the weight, just get the skin fold test done. But I went and lost the weight. I left her that Friday. She told me to return the following Friday with the test. I came back
A week later?
A week later, I showed up, I was 14 pounds lighter. If you pull my HPD folder, you'll see my picture from the day I showed up and the day, and she was like, what did you do?
What did you do?
Well, there's a guy I knew there was a boxer. And, boxers have to drop water weight. And so he told me to put on those plastic suits and go into the sauna twice a day, in the morning and the evening. And he said, don't eat anything but tuna and drink a lot of water and take your free laxatives.
I lost weight like that in a week before, Vivian.
Wow.
You want to know how I did it?
No.
Okay.
Now you can tell me how'd you do it?
So it's you see what this is, right? It's not a You don't know what this
Oh,
is?
Lord. Oh, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that.
No, we don't want to talk about that. Tonight is not your story, then. We're not going to talk about
I'm just telling
cocaine.
you,
But we're going to talk
I'm
about
just
your
trying
cocaine.
to tell you I lost 15 pounds in a week before. But go ahead.
But you weren't trying to lose weight. You were trying to get high.
Oh.
So instead of getting high losing weight, because
I'm
we
just
know
saying
you
it's
can do
possible.
that.
It's possible.
Oh yeah, it's possible
So-
if you speeding up your body with cocaine. Yeah, you can do that.
I'm
But
just-
we're talking about how do you lose weight naturally.
I
Yeah,
don't want you to think it's not impossible.
No,
Go
it's
ahead.
possible. It's possible. So, yeah, I did that twice
Especially
a
when
day.
you're 5'10" too, so you're a big
Yeah,
person, so you
yeah.
can drop it.
Yeah, and so I was used to working out anyway, but getting up in the morning, standing there for an hour, then going back again in the evening, standing there for an hour, and then while you're in there, you working out, and you just sweating and sweating, and then, I don't think
Right, you
I'm...
can kill yourself.
Yeah, because I'm like, there was
Dehydrate
Friday,
yourself.
Saturday, that's what I did. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. By Tuesday, I was doing this here. My body was just like, I didn't have nothing in me. Like, I like,
shaking.
yeah.
You're going to die trying to
And
become
I
a
know,
police
right?
officer.
But I stopped, I stopped
And
taking the
tuna
laxatives.
is so really dry.
It's just dry.
It's
Yeah,
so
but
dry to
this
eat.
boxer told me, he's like, this is how we do it the night before we wait. We have to weigh in the next day. He said, this is what we do. And I was like, okay, I'm finna go try this.
So you get rid of the water in your body.
Yeah, you
By
weigh
sweating.
less.
Yeah.
By sweating with those
yeah.
sweatsuits.
So that's what I did. And then when I showed up, and then also being a professional basketball player, then we always have to drop weight all the time too. So I was used to the sauna thing. It was just a little laxative thing he threw, and they said, take a laxative, couple laxatives every night.
You tear yourself
Lord.
up.
Yeah, I did. And so
Lord.
when I showed up, like I said, I showed up Friday. That Friday I came in the door, she said, what did you do?
I would have gave you a drug tip.
I said, don't worry about it. I said, because when I leave here, I'm going to get some Popeye's chicken. You just keep this going.
I was like,
So that's what I
well,
told
hold
her.
up. We got a drug test you first, because
yeah.
you can't lose that much
Yeah,
weight
I
in a
did
week.
it. I did. And I was younger too, but I did. And I wanted the job. I was so focused on, just wanting to help my community. I've always been a person that just want to help people. And I was like, you know what? This is a great opportunity, because my whole focus was HPD was getting into the DARE program. I always just wanted to be an officer that went into the schools and
Let them know what
motivated
DARE
kids.
is, because
DARE,
it's old school.
yeah. I forgot what DARE means.
Was it
Drug awareness. R is resistance.
education? Close enough.
That
Okay.
sounds good enough.
Close
But
enough.
the program was to help children.
Yeah.
To help children be afraid to
Do drugs and just say no.
drugs.
Remember they were doing the
Yeah.
just say no
Yeah.
thing. But they also had officers that worked in community service that's their main job, to go into schools and work with those kids.
Educate 'em.
And that's all I wanted to do. Like, I'm here for the DARE program. I'm just here to work with kids. That's because that's always what I've loved to do. And so, but I'm also a person that, I speak up, and everybody that after I did the last show, they said, well, that's you gonna always say something, you see something wrong, and that's just how I've always been. I just call it like I see it. And sometimes I may just need to be quiet, but
It's too late now.
Too late now. But some issues you just cannot be quiet about, right? And so you have to speak up on it, even if it costs you something, and especially
you
with somebody's
something.
life involved in it. And I'm just who I am. Still am to that day. But anyway, so went through the application process. I had like when I was in college, I had like 2 credit cards that I had stopped paying on. I had to get those credit cards straightened out. You know, they go by credit back then. I don't know. I'm understanding they may not do that right now. But when I was applying for HPD, they went by credit. Your credit had to be good and good standing. So I had to work on my 2 credit cards for a whole year, and that's what I did. I paid them.
Oh, so you had to wait a year before you still had to go wait a year.
I still had to wait a year.
Because of the credit card. So what about the, could you go through the academy then, or you just you had to wait to go through the academy?
You had to show them that you were consistent in paying your bills, your credit, and they checked on that.
Okay, and so let's fast forward to the academy.
Okay, so I show up. I get into the academy after I was told on a Monday I was in, and on Thursday they told me that that was a wrong phone call, but call me back Friday. Said okay, we gotta let you into the police academy, no problem. So yeah, I was told Monday that I was in. Somebody called me on Thursday and said that they told you were in. Who called you? I said, well, somebody called me, and then they called me on Friday. So they said, okay, no problem. We're going to have to go ahead and let you in since you quit your job and blah, blah, blah. Okay. So I start the academy that Monday. Show up. I think I was in class 163, if I'm not mistaken, red class. We show up at the academy. We go in. We sit down, whatever. And, you know, my experience with the academy was a little difficult because I can't stand to see people do certain things. Like, you know, I was telling y'all the last time we were in a class where we were watching film of people being robbed, convenience store robberies, and that's part of the training. And so, you know, like I said, if you're being robbed with a gun to your face or somebody's attacking you, and you don't know how you will react. None of us really know, you know, until it happens. And so a couple of people were, you know, they were crying and doing certain things, and so I heard people like laughing under their breath, like, you know, we call it sniggling, like, you know,
right,
like it's funny, and I'm just like, so I'm so into the, like, I'm feeling what these people going. I'm literally just shaking. I'm shaking watching these people being robbed, you know, and then that just catches my attention. People were laughing, and I looked around and I saw cadets laughing, and I just stood up and I said, this is nothing to laugh about. This is serious, and I walked out the class. And so after I got outside, the officer that was over the class walked out. I told him I need to go downstairs and talk to whoever the sergeant was or whatever. And they explained to me that I can't do that. That's, you know, you can't be, you know, standing up and taking a stand or whatever. And I said, I don't like it, and it's wrong, and I don't like it. And I'll be mindful of that, you know. Mm-hmm. But that was one incident. And then there was another incident. You know, we were watching a sexual assault take place. And it was the guy filmed it. And
was it with a child?
No, it was a woman. It was a woman being raped. And from somebody who had been attacked, it was difficult for me to watch it. And so I got up and walked out again. I just couldn't. And another cadet told me later, when we became police officers, he told me, he said, man, that time we were watching that, he said, your face, he said, you were just cringing up. You know, he didn't know what I had gone through. And so I got called back in downstairs to see the sergeant. And what she explained to me was this was a time where we supposed to dismiss you, you know, because this is maybe a little bit too much for you. And I was like, no, I'm fine. It was just that I had been attacked. And she said, oh, we didn't know that. I said, so that's something that triggered me. And so I was allowed to stay. And there was other situations where, you know, we had some females in the class that I felt like were only in the police academy because of who they knew or who they were married to, per se another officer. And they would act, my mouth would be smart. I always got something fly to say or something like that. And one particular female, she sat right behind me, and I told her, I turned around like she was being ugly or something and said out of her mouth. And I just told her, I said, sweetheart, the only reason why you're in here because your husband's a sergeant. And trust and believe, you can, we hit these streets, you cannot handle yourself on the streets. And so, you know, I just lay it out like when I, you know, and then it is what it is.
You just mouthed it out.
Yeah, I mean, but don't try to come at me. That's the way I was back in the day. Because I saw I was being attacked. And then, and so, it was just other things that if I saw it, it was something that was racial or you know, they knew I didn't like it, and I didn't try to hide it. You know, that's racial. And I'm like, okay, so you make me lose weight, but we get to the academy class, and this young lady over here is way overweight, but you make me go and lose weight. You know.
So why do you think that happened? She was not black?
She wasn't black. No.
Was she related to somebody in the academy?
Yeah. So one day they asked for all the cadets to stand up that have relatives on the police department. we had a class of 70. I think about 55 to 60
Right.
stood up.
Right, right.
Okay.
Big nepotism.
Yes. And
But
then,
that's expected. I mean, it's not normal, but it's normal.
It's normal for the police department.
Right.
It should be.
They
and that's another thing that
It's
I
a
was
culture.
But it's a lot of bias when you do that.
Yes.
It's a lot of
Yes,
favoritism.
and that's the problem, right? And so we wondering, and let me go to this. And so the next question he asked was he wanted people to stand up that were from the military. That was about the same number of people. I couldn't stand up on either one of them. Me and maybe 3 other people. But it was like, so I'm figuring things out now. So, and that's I tell people all the time, we've got to change that narrative in the police department. I mean, you continue to hire the same type of people. So you're asking for a different result. So we get people that are not connected to our communities.
But so let me add this: knowing the history, and if you ever have time, of how the police department became into existence, explains what it is now. It was never really created
Exactly.
to keep communities safe initially. Am I right, Vivian? The history of the police force. Well, in this country, police forces were created not to serve and protect. It was to enforce laws.
For the rich people.
Slavery.
No.
For these ones that
Like
run
I
away
said,
from
when they
it.
came out.
But that's going back too far, Dan.
Well, I'm not. What I'm just saying
You're going
is,
back too
well,
far.
it created a culture that
Right.
hadn't really been rooted out.
But that culture has like it's turned into a different culture because one of the things that she saw a lot of this past what you're saying, I think I'm not disagreeing with you, but when you start having, they didn't have women in the police force then. So once you get women in there, that changed the whole dynamics because a lot of times in any profession that used to be men, lawyers, when I was a banker, the women start having sex with the men. And so then relationships form. So then once it's families like that, it's mothers, daughters, sons, grandfathers,
Nephew.
everybody. So that's like going against a tribe, but that's when, what you're talking about going after slaves, they're all on one accord. It's all men, they all got the same, all white men going after whoever they're going after. What she's talking about is a nepotism. You can't, how you gonna come between a daddy and a grandfather or a child or a husband and wife?
I'll get it.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's so that's the culture she's dealing with now. And that culture is in all professional arenas right now, but really in old professions like that. It's like that in the courthouse. A lot of the judges are married to each other. A lot of them, especially traditionally, we're in the DA's office together. But I understand that culture because I see them. Oh, and it's horrible in New York. I mean, New York Police Department. That's why that's why a lot of these police departments can get away with the stuff they're doing is because how is a grandfather, an uncle, a brother gonna criticize they children, or girlfriends, or wives? If you're an IAD, how are you gonna do that? I mean, how are you gonna? I mean,
They
that's
collaborate
what I
so
see.
well.
Well, you love them. I mean, it's not business. You love. I mean, you have true, honest love relationships that you're partying with, you hanging out with. So that's why police departments really should not police themselves.
No.
IAD should not be in the same because you can't even expect. I'm not even criticizing it. I'm educating and making an observation. How would I criticize my daughter? I mean, I can do it on a mama-daughter level, but on professional level, I'm always, even if she does something wrong, I'm still try to. I don't want to lose her job and her pension.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? So that's what she was dealing with. So she's in the class snickering where they already knew what they were going to see. When she's in the cadet class and she's looking at a robbery and she's looking at a rape, they already are desensitized to it because they know they got to look at a robbery and a rape. So they're looking at those people as second-class citizens. These are not my relatives. They already know that they're going to see it. They probably saw it growing up at home, looking at videos.
At least heard about it.
Yeah, they probably saw it. That's what I'm saying. A lot of people bring their work home. So, you already know. So they already know, don't show any emotions, even if you feel it.
Yeah.
But she's not. She's going through it as a first-generation
Extreme.
police officer, feeling it. And black people have this way of feeling like, I don't care if the defendant or the person being wronged is white, we're going to always relate to what they're feeling. I found this in the legal profession. A lot of times they thought that the black people black jurors would only side with black defendants. That's not true. And I've had to tell my white colleagues, black jurors they're gonna side with white defendants too if they feel like they're being wronged.
Exactly.
Because we always see ourselves as the people being wronged. And so the problem is she's sitting there as a cop she's not even supposed to emotionally feel for these victims, but she sees herself as a victim. And that, because we see ourselves as underdogs a lot of times. It's our culture. It's a culture we're growing out of, but it's the culture we live in now. Like if she's a police officer and her daughter's a police officer, she'd tell them what to expect and say, okay, now you ain't gonna pass cadet if you start getting emotional. So they might be looking at it, but not really looking at it. You know, they're not really feeling it. They're thinking, okay, they already playing mind games with themselves. So she's sitting up getting pissed off about it.
Yeah.
And wanting to say something to them. Well, it's just a game to them. It's just like a necessary evil that they have to pass through to get through it, to get on the street. So she doesn't even understand what she's looking at.
I don't.
You don't understand. You don't understand what's going on in that environment around you.
And then to hear you explain it, I just truly believe if they had been explained to me that way,
right?
Just get through it, but it wasn't.
You didn't know, so you had raw emotions that you're feeling.
Yeah.
If someone would have said, look, you're going to see some rough things, but just bath through it.
Don't internalize it.
Don't make no noise. Don't say anything. If you got to cry about it at home, do it, but just work yourself through it. But nobody told you that. Yeah, yeah.
I didn't get that
But
conversation.
see, and as first-generation professionals, many of us black people didn't get that. You know, we've had to learn it. I mean, the advice I give my daughter is what I've had to learn.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have known that, and I just had to go through it. You know, and you had to go through it, but unfortunately, you would. And dealing with policing is one of the hardest jobs you can have because you can be 18, 19, 20. This is almost your first job, and you got to deal with dead bodies. You got to deal with robberies, shooting. I mean, that's a lot to deal with for a young person on how you deal with it.
Exactly.
It's a lot to deal
Without
with.
your own lived experience of what you're dealing with.
Or having a relative tell you what to expect and how to process it.
Exactly.
You didn't have that.
None of that. Like I told y'all before, I arrived in Texas by myself on a plane with $35 in my pocket. I had two suitcases, a yellow one and a green one, and running down the airport about to miss a plane. Had a friend around the corner give me a ride to the airport, and my grandmother running behind me. You know, after all we'd been through, and I looked back, my grandmother was running behind me, like, "What are you doing?" And so when I arrived in Texas, I had nobody. There's nobody I could call. I was on my own, just trying to make it on my own.
I understand. I can totally relate to that. I do the same thing, so I understand.
So,
and it's not easy.
No, it's not. And so all I'm thinking about every day in my life is I have two sisters and a little brother at home and a mother that's struggling with drug addiction. And they need me.
My Lord.
They need me to be somebody. They need for me to make it so I can bring them here and support them. And so I was the one that got out. And so that's all that's on my mind when I'm going through these things. I got to get my mama. I got to get my brothers and my sisters. I got to get them in a better place. Every day of my life, this is what I'm thinking about. And so to be put in a place like that, in my heart is to make sure that my mom is not died, not just, doesn't get killed on the street, or my sisters and brothers are not in a place where they're molested or anything like that. Those things are on my mind daily. And so,
so you're trying to better yourself.
I'm trying to better myself.
Trying to better yourself, but
get
you don't know what to expect.
Place.
Yes, and you did that. And you,
I
did that the hard way. You took the long scenic route.
Wish I had somebody that was there to
mentor me,
and and so I was.
It's unfortunate that person that wanted you to be a police officer so badly didn't mentor you and tell you what to expect.
No, did not.
And let me tell you what, sometimes when they think we black women, you big, you strong, they think we can handle anything. But a lot of people don't know what our circumstances are.
You didn't know.
He didn't know your circumstance. I can relate to it because I had a very similar background, and people expected a lot from me because I was smart and a big mouth. And people still do. People don't realize you're affected by the way you were raised.
Exactly,
and people don't understand that.
They don't
understand.
And that's why I take pride in what I was doing for kids. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I understand.
And it's like, okay, when I was substitute teacher, I'm like, hey, this is me. And my classes were quiet. I was at Fondren Middle School. My classes were quiet. It was like, how does she do that? Well, I give myself to them. I tell them who I am. And every day they come in, they see me, and they're good because they feel like I'm them, and I am them.
Right.
And so that process was.
Let's get back to policing.
Yeah, that was one of those processes where, like, say, I didn't know I was still having, like you said, traumatic situations mentally, but I fought every day in the police academy to do the things I had to do. I never shot a gun before. We went through gun range, and I couldn't. The gunshot would just scare the crap out of me. And
how'd you get over that?
so I had to go to remedial shooting, which is everybody that can shoot, most everybody that could shoot because they were out the military. They were moved on. It's okay, y'all start coming to remedial shooting. And so I would come home, I had my hands all scarred up, the Glock was taking my skin off and everything. So what one of the trainers did said, I'm gonna send you to a guy who we use when we have people that have never shot a gun before, and they're very, scared about the sound of it and everything. So he sent me to the gun range to meet this guy. And this guy had to talk with me about things I did my personal. I said, well, I play basketball. He said, good, we're gonna use that. And he used that to help me to understand about looking at my sight, because when I shoot a basketball, I know I'm looking at the rim. My eyes are always on the rim. And so he say, now use that, your eyes is on the sight. And he's saying, just squeeze. It just squeezed. And let me tell you, when I left there that day, I was hitting 10s right in the middle.
Wow.
Because he gave me that concept in my mind. So when we went back.
He was a good teacher.
He was a great teacher. And so went back the next day, and I was good. I was good because I had basketball in my mind. I had something that I knew and I was very familiar with. And immediately we started shooting the first round, and the instructor came out from behind, stop, you're testing. And so I test, and I came out, I was 1 point from a sharp, I made a sharpshooter, 1 point from expert shooter.
Wow.
And so he gave me my little badge, little tag. I was so excited about that. And then he said, go to class. And I walked in that class, you should have saw those people's faces, some of those people's faces. They knew they had me. They said, that's it, she ain't gonna make it through that.
She's not gonna make it through
But I made it through that. And another thing, I was with the runs, we had to do the running. And so I had to drop a lot of weight. Still had to drop a lot of weight. And so
How much more weight do you think
I
you
dropped, once I got in the police academy, I dropped about another 30,
Oh, wow.
probably another 30 pounds, easily 30.
Well, plus, one of the things that's bad is when you're a cop, that band and all that stuff is heavy,
it's
heavy,
heavy.
heavy.
It
And it's
is
heavy
heavy.
on little women.
It's
So, yeah, it's
heavy.
heavy. It's heavy.
I'll tell you
But you can't have too much weight. But then you can't be
No.
you got to be strong because it's
Yeah,
heavy.
it's heavy.
It's not made for women.
It's not made for women at all.
It's heavy.
And it's why
I've never had it on, but I watch women. I can tell it's
it is
heavy.
ugly. It feels bad. And so that's why I was happy once I got through the running part. I had to get my run up, and I finally started running and beating the men cadets. And so, we got that done. And so at the end, like I say, once we were getting ready to graduate, as I was leaving out the door, as I was walking toward the door, Irma, young lady, I'm gonna call it Miss Jones.
All right,
I'm sorry.
we're not gonna get into the
name.
details. We
Yeah.
gotta
But anyway,
skip that.
Okay, so I walked out the door.
Because we got to get through it tonight.
Okay, so I go out the door, we come back, and we done tonight? So I got to hurry up. So anyway,
You can always
No,
come
we said
back.
we just want to get to the part.
We want to get to where you left off, yeah.
Because we're going over some of the things that we talk about in
Yeah.
part one, but we want to pick up to where it gets to where you're dealing with not the badge part, but now the bars part.
Right,
And what that experience like being in that environment versus being out in society, actually
Exactly.
being a police officer.
So start where you go out and you find that. Let's talk about the case. Let's just talk about your case. Let's talk about you're a police officer. You've been a police officer a couple of years now?
At that time, I was a police officer for like 12 years when this happened. I was I was a AAU basketball coach at this time. I had a nonprofit called the Youth Outlet. I told you guys about that.
Right.
And so I had kids that were playing sports for me, and we were traveling around, going different places, and I would pay for their uniforms, pay for their traveling, pay for food. I was just trying to do everything off my HPD income. And so young lady asked me, hey, you need to do a nonprofit, and they can help you, blah, blah, blah. So we did a nonprofit, came through. End up then people were let the kids work at different events and things like that. And so one young lady that ended up playing for me because everybody had heard about me getting kids basketball scholarships, and I was getting phone calls, like I was getting kids full rides. And so a young lady from the Urban League called me, was the vice president at that time, and her daughter was playing basketball, and she wanted her daughter to play for me and help her. And so she came on and started playing for me. She did well, and so the person from the Urban League said, hey, we have a grant from Katrina, and you're one of the grassroots organizations that we want to use. We're going to hire you out to do basketball camps, wherever you want to do them, through this Katrina grant. And it was, the grant came from, you can use for any hurricane.
You remember how much it was?
Their total grant amount, I don't know what their total grant amount was.
Oh, so they was kind of like, they didn't let you know what the...
No, they just said we
'Cause
got
once they get a grant, they can use it for different programs.
Right.
For Katrina, I guess. But I don't know what kind of grant it was, but.
Yeah, and that was the thing. I had never been involved in anything like that. I was just told to go see a young lady that was up under the vice president, and she'll give me the rules and what I needed to do. And she did. She gave me the rules, said, hey, here's a piece of paper. This is what you need to do. Go do all your basketball camps, get the names, addresses, phone numbers, bring it back, and we're going to pay you for those camps. And that's what I did. I went to Beaumont. I went to different other schools here in Houston. I did basketball camps. I was calling people, hey, they were just bringing kids in. Just, I can do basketball camps, all right? Turn that paperwork in. I get paid. I get a call about 2 weeks later. She said, come back in. We had the rules, we did all that wrong. I was like, what? She said, we need to go back and find these kids and get 3 pieces of paper for each kid filled out. I said, I can't find these kids, all these kids.
So the auditors wanted more documentation.
Yeah, I think so. She said it was from the federal government.
That's what it is.
And so, but then she tell me that it's their money, they can make the rules the way they want to make the rules, right? But then you call me in and say, now you're saying to get 3 pieces of paper filled out for 1 child, which I can't find these kids. So I said, listen, I don't know these zip codes. She says to me, put the same zip code on every one of them.
Oh,
That's
no.
exactly what she said to me. She said, can't you
Oh,
get somebody?
that sounds like fraud.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So she's like, can you get somebody to hire somebody to do this for you? I
So
said, well,
she
yeah.
told you a shortcut.
Yeah. I'm
Because it
asking
wasn't
her, how
going
do
to
I
affect
find
her.
That's what I said, how am I going to find these kids? This is exactly what she said to me. I said, okay. I have a lady that
But I
works
thought
with
they
me.
had to write down their name and address.
I
phone
did.
number.
I wrote down the name and the address, but some of the kids didn't know their right address. They didn't know. They didn't even know their real mom, the person who was taking care of them, didn't know their real names. And so I told her all this. I said, look, I'm getting kids that don't even know how to, we got to help them kind of write. Like they don't, it's like, this is crazy. She said, just get much as you can. And that's what I did. And the blanks were empty on the paperwork. Like I said, this is what I got from this kid.
So their parents, they didn't have to have a parent or guardian
No.
come sign them up from the program?
No, they were just showing us a
That's
part.
probably the mistake you made.
Well,
They probably needed some
Not
ID.
knowing, though.
But not knowing, like,
but I'm
these
just saying.
kids
But
are-
I'm not. I know. I'm
Yeah.
just saying. I'm just thinking about the educational part.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just like kind of when you show up to register for school.
Yeah.
You know, you might not have the right parent. You know, you might be taking care of your niece, but you got to get something
Yeah.
to
For
show.
grants,
Yeah.
absolutely, the
But you got to
federal
get
government.
shoved just for anything with
well,
the
what we
government.
had were kids showing up at schools that were there on the summer program. They just was there to eat lunch. Like they come in like just to eat. They know the school provided a free lunch
lunch.
thing.
Right.
And so those were the kids that I led in my basketball camp. Like I
Gotcha.
told them, y'all show up in the mornings and then y'all can go eat, then come back to the camp. And so those were the kids at some of the places, not all of them.
Right,
But then
right.
some
But
places
that's how you
like
recruited some of them.
Exactly. But some of them were already at community centers too. When we call it community centers, yeah, we got a bunch of kids. Yeah, we
Well,
love to put
especially if
them
it's the summertime.
Exactly.
And they don't have to show their ID, but you needed it though.
Yeah, but like I said, kids were just showing up, and they didn't have parents; they were showing up, and I was like, okay. And to me back then, it wasn't a big deal because I'm just used to that.
Yeah, and you didn't understand grants.
No, I didn't
Grants, you
understand
got to
none
have
of that.
everything. You got to have all the
I
paperwork.
did
Otherwise,
not
they're going to assume it's
understand.
fraud.
Exactly. And the person who's giving me instructions, you're giving me these instructions. So why would I think? And you're telling me that this is y'all can do the rules y'all way y'all want to.
So
do.
when you went to trial, did that person that was giving you those instructions, did you subpoena her to show up?
I couldn't subpoena. The DA office had already threatened to put charges on her. This is my understanding that she was getting charges put on her.
So you still could have subpoenaed them to show up and say what she did.
Okay.
This sound like at the end poor representation. What year was this?
Very, very.
What year was this again?
2000. I was convicted in 2010. Went to trial in 2010. September 2010 went to trial.
But did you have any? But so you didn't have any witnesses on your behalf to prove why you
All the
did
witnesses
the paperwork like that?
Exactly. Were threatened. And I was told this by each one of them before they hung the phone up on me that the DA's threatened to put them in prison too. So
Or at least charge them.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
But
we'll add
one
you
lady
to
said, yeah. One the lady who did my paperwork actually said that she was crying. She Tracie that threatened to put she said she's gonna put my son in prison. I said, but you did the paperwork, lady. I said you added names. You told him you took some names out of a phone book. That's what I'm hearing. Like I didn't know for sure. I knew for sure once she took the stand and she said she had done that.
Oh, she did take the stand.
And they asked her why. She said because she was mad because she she didn't feel like I was paying her enough money in such words. She didn't feel like and I'm sitting in the trial like I didn't know you felt that way about me.
Now, is that the Urban League lady?
No, this
That's
is the
the
lady
lady
that
that
told
was
me to
working for
hire.
you.
Yeah, they asked me to hire.
But what
somebody.
about did the Urban League lady testify against you?
That lady never came to my trial.
and
But the two Urban League ladies that did show up, the president and vice president, the president was the one that said we never said Tracie stole anything from us. And then they asked
She
her.
testified to that?
Yeah, it's in the transcript. She said that. She said we didn't say Tracie stole anything from us. They said, well, how did this come about? She said, the DA office said this. She said, the DA office came and told us she was stealing from us.
But the DA's office wouldn't known it unless somebody turned it into them.
That came from the man that was mad at me because his wife told the lady who's worked for me, told him, Tracie do more for this family than you do. So he got mad and went to the IED and said I was stealing money from them.
Someone she hired to help her
Yeah.
with the camps. So when she got paid, she would pay her.
Right.
The husband felt like Tracie ain't breaking bread with you, giving you your fair share. So
So
she's
he
Well,
went-
saying,
well, he knew I was. He felt like she had stopped working for their family business. They had a family business and they were behind on their mortgage and things like that.
because she's
She was
spending
working
too
for
much
me.
time.
But what
with
about
you.
what about him? I mean, he was working. I mean, she was supposed to
Well,
pay his mortgage.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, his business wasn't going well. The business they had wasn't going well. So that's why she was working so hard for me to try to catch up on. They were behind 3-5 months on mortgage or something. She was telling me, suppose he had a warrant or whatever, and she needed the money bad. That's what she was telling me. And so when he came in, I guess they had been arguing, and he said, "I'm sick of this or whatever. You doing all this work for Tracie, you don't do nothing for the house, whatever." She said, Tracie does more for this family than you do. And that's when he said, I'm gonna show you and Tracie.
Did they break up?
Yeah, eventually, but when we went to trial, they were divorced then. I found out they were divorced. They both said they were divorced on the stand. That's when I found out. And then she also admitted to that she was doing, adding names or stuff like that. And then because she was mad at me, she felt like she wanted to make more money out of me. And so my question, like, I was like telling my attorney, like, well, why they charge her with theft? And he said that they told her that they didn't want her. They wanted me.
Wow.
And we know why they wanted me.
Like if we get you, we can build a case if we get you to say that Tracie did this and Tracie did. You was just working. We don't want you. We want her. So just give us enough to convict her. We'll let you ride.
Well, that's not the DA's office today, but I have heard that it's like that. Or if someone calls me and tells me that's what's happening, I'll check it out. But make sure it's not. But I don't get those kind of calls. But there was a cold demeanor time.
Yeah, and I was involved in that time, and I know that, and
There
that's
was
the
a
thing.
cold demeanor time.
And when I was going through the trial, those are the things that I was being told. Like, this DA's office. This is a serious situation. And I'm like, why can't I just talk to the DA? Like, so let's move forward because I got a letter in the mail telling me from the DA's office somebody said I had committed theft, and that's how I ended up down at the DA's office. I was in my patrol car, and I said I'm going down now because I haven't done anything. My mom was like, Tracie, you need to go. I said, for what? I haven't done anything. So now everybody's telling me since all this stuff happened, you should have went to the union first and then let them do. I was
should
like. Yeah, looking back on it now, yeah. But I was such a person, like, I haven't done anything wrong. I'm going to go ahead and go down here and talk to
I
this
know,
lady.
but if the DA's write
not
somebody and give you a
understand
target,
that.
they feel like they have evidence.
Covered. You need
I did
protection.
not
And
understand
that's why the police have union. You should have gone to the union
Oh, well, let's
and
talk about
gotten
that.
advice from the union.
Well,
So
let's
can
talk
we-
about the union.
So
Okay, all
before
right,
we
talk
do
about
that, can
that.
we tell the public, even if you don't work at the police department, if you work somewhere where you have a union, you have an issue at your job, whatever it is, that's why you pay union dues.
That is.
Let's talk about that.
For
Yeah,
advice.
just for advice.
But we have he's saying 15 minutes. Okay. So what you want to talk about the union?
Yeah, let's talk about the union. So when I go down to I was skip over the part where me and the DA sat down and talk with each other because that's what she used against me to get me convicted. But let's go back to the union. I called the union, and they give me an attorney named Paula Goodhart. And Paula was just leaving the DA's office. And her and Therese Buse were very good friends. And I'm not mad at neither one of y'all. Thank you. You blessed me. And so she called me and we met. And she and our conversation, we argued.
Now, which one?
Paula. Paula Goodhart. Every time we call, I go to see her, she's telling me what the DA is saying that you did and not listening to what I'm trying to show her. I even, so I'm telling people like this, they said, why would the union give you her? She just left the DA's office. And her and the lady, do you know her and Therese best good friends? I'm like, I don't know this. You give me this lady, and we're arguing every time me and her meet. We're arguing, we're going back and forth. And I'm
Now,
like,
what is the argument about?
you're telling me what the DA's telling
Well,
you.
she has to
I'm
tell
trying
you what
to tell
they're
you.
saying. Okay, and
yeah,
you gotta tell them what your part, your side.
Yeah,
You
but
didn't
it's
feel
just
like she
like
was listening?
Yeah, she wasn't listening. I felt like she was trying to take sides and already have made a conclusion, and I'm trying to explain my situation. So what I did was, okay, we met again. I said, look, Paul, I have T-shirts. I have receipts for T-shirts. Well, bring all that up here. We need all the evidence.
Right.
I brought all that to her, right? And I had just I had enough with me and her. And I just said, I'm just going to have to let, because somebody called me and said, you need to let her go. Get somebody else, because we don't think that how she's going to represent you. And I'm like, I didn't even know this situation, that this person, these two people are that close. And I thought that she probably, if she could have separated herself, I felt like she could have represented me better than what I had. I know she could represent me better than what I had, but I felt like she should have she had the relationship there that it was difficult. Looking back on it, I just think it was too difficult.
And that's the part. And I'm not saying that they had a relationship, because I don't know, but I do know both of them.
Yeah.
I can't say that, but I can say this: it's difficult when everybody's connected.
It's difficult.
You know, like we were talking about earlier, when everybody's related and they're friends and they drink together, they live next door to each other. And I'm not saying they do. I know nothing about where they live, but I'm just saying that's what makes the job difficult in criminal law. And I think that's how the criminal law evolved into much more bias, evil bias.
Yes.
And evil bias. That's what you experience in the police department. There's a lot of good cops, but when everybody's connected like that, they can make fun of people, they can put people down, mankind, for some reason, the evil part of our nature wants to put other people down.
Yes.
And so if we can all think the same, from the same culture. So I don't buy into so much of it used to be because of the slavery part. That's one way of looking at it if you're not in the system. But if you're in the system like we are, like with police officers, in the power part of the criminal justice system, you can't really relate to 200 years ago or 400 years ago, because what you see now is different. It might be the same mentality, but what you see is just a lot of nepotism, and everybody knows everybody. Everybody in the DA's office, there was a time that everybody lived in the Heights. They all married to each other. When they get divorced, they marry each other again. It's like everybody is in the same culture. And I see that in the police department too. You're kind of an outcast if you're not in that culture. You got to try to be in that clique. It's kind of like a clique. I remember when I first went to the DA's office in '92, I was like, this is the biggest gang in town. When I looked at police, at the police, I was like, it's just that mentality, we're going to all do the same thing. You know what I mean? It's like, if your neighbors buy a boat, I'm going to buy a boat.
Yes.
Whatever. If I buy this kind of gun, I'm going to buy that kind of gun. If you're going to buy that kind of rifle, I'm going to buy that kind of rifle. I mean, it's such a clique mindset.
Yes.
It's hard. It's a hard system to beat, and they don't go against each other. That's the problem.
But you can't, even advocates against the criminal justice system, which we both know, and then I always say, can we at least talk about that it's certain parts of what they got going, you're not going to break that down. You can advocate for change, but it's still going to be a tribal environment where they're going to say what they need to say publicly. They're going to do what they need to do publicly. But privately, you can't control what they do privately. And they know that. They say, look, we're just going to say what we need to say, do, but we know, wink, wink,
Exactly. Yeah.
the results we want. We pick winners, we pick losers, and we decide that. If we want you to get away,
Exactly.
whether you're wrong or right, we can let you go through.
That can happen.
Well, yeah, and so once I gave her all my information, all my T-shirts, I gave her T-shirts, I gave her receipts for T-shirts that I had bought for camps, because they were saying I didn't do no camps. I was like, that's a lie. I got this stuff. Took that stuff to
Was that in the days when you took pictures? Did y'all have pictures of like the kids competing?
We had a few pictures, not that many. It wasn't this, like today.
Like today with all
you
this
better
cell
overdo it, yeah. And so but I'm learning now. I've learned all that since, those are things I should have done. I just was a bad business person, but I had a heart to do for
You're a
people.
bad business person, and that's the problem. A lot of times when people want to do good, you don't have a good business person with you.
I did not.
You don't have a good business person, because what you really should have done, and this is educational.
And
I'm
this
not trying to tell
hindsight-
you what to do.
Yeah.
Is you should have had somebody read the grant. You should have read the grant. If you were participating in the grant, you should have read it, because the grants are going to tell you what kind of documentation is required, how often they're going to look at it. Because, federal grants money, you have to do reporting, and it's quarterly. It might be a one-year grant, but you got to do quarterly reports.
I didn't.
So
Ask some people about them PP loans.
I don't
How-
know.
Yeah.
what-
Well, I
you
just
know,
I
what's-
just listened to the person. I just showed up and believed what they were telling me, and I thought they
Right,
were good
right.
people, and I felt like they.
And you
that's,
should
know,
have.
And I didn't
And
know
you
any
should
better.
have. I would have
And
too. How
That's
would
the
you
only thing
know?
I was trying to explain that
Yeah.
I didn't know, and that was never good enough. And everybody said, no, they want you, Tracie. This is something serious.
And there was a time when I remember as a defense attorney, my clients would tell me, you know, I can't get her to come testify for me because they're threatening to take her kids to CPS. They say the police would threaten to take
Yeah.
women's kids,
Yeah.
and threaten
Yeah.
grandmamas to take
Yeah.
kids, even if they had evidence that could prove somebody's
Yeah.
innocence. I have witnessed a corrupt time
Yeah.
in Harris
Yeah.
County.
And everybody
I
was
want to
threatened.
believe it's not like that now. Nothing that
I'm
I'm
trying to go through it
around.
and find out. Let me tell
huh?
you, I'm not trying to go through it and find out.
I know, but
I
there
know
was a
back
time that
then-
there was a lot of threats
Yeah.
being made
Yeah.
to people to keep them from testifying.
and it worked.
I mean,
It
you
worked.
know that with
effective.
Anthony Graves.
It was
I mean, his
effective.
Right.
girlfriend was
Yeah.
threatened.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They did charge her. I think they did charge his girlfriend. They charged the woman he was with the night to prove that he wasn't where this murder took place.
Yeah.
They charged her, and they didn't dismiss it until I think he got convicted. But they threatened her.
Yeah, everybody was dismissed. Charges was dropped once I got convicted, and I found this out once I came home. And so the attorneys that I hired, I guess they were green, new, or whatever. I don't know.
So up to this point, because it looked like we're gonna have to have a part 3, because there's 6 minutes going on. I don't know when we're gonna do it, because we haven't gone through prison or anything like I wanted to. But since we've gone this far, what would you have done different? What would you want to tell the Tracie Brown that you are at this age? What would you want to tell that Tracie Brown from 20 years ago? What would you tell yourself? How would you advise yourself?
I would.
Let's talk about just going through the academy. How would
Yeah.
you advise yourself?
I would advise myself to just get through it and fake it till I make it.
Okay.
And then-
And how would you advise yourself in terms of the basketball and the urban league? Because people come to you with an offer, you know, you're gonna want to accept that. But tell me what would you advise yourself? If you were the 20-year-old, you were the older Tracie telling the younger Tracie, if this was your daughter going through this, what would you advise her?
I would advise her to. First, I would have probably told her not to do it because later on I found out that the Urban League is very unorganized. Back then,
Okay.
they were
Good,
very unorganized.
good.
So back then, today I would have said, hey, you need to make sure that you have everything documented. Take a lot of pictures.
Do your research.
Do your research, but really document everything you're doing and make sure you know what needs to be turned in and have everything on the paperwork that needs to be done. Don't skip over something and say, I don't do that.
Don't take somebody's word for it.
Don't take nobody's word for
Right.
it. You know.
Because the
yeah.
Urban League has protection. There are old organizations that sanction under the civil rights movement. And so if they screw up, somebody's going to go in and fix it for them.
Well,
You
I'll say
understand
they
what I'm
did.
saying?
Yeah.
No, they're going to fix it. I mean, it's like the NAACP. It's like black colleges. People are going to try to save these institutions.
Yeah.
People who love
Yeah.
these institutions are going to try to save these institutions. So, which is a good
But if
thing.
if you're a new person starting a nonprofit, do your homework.
Right.
Learn how to run a nonprofit.
Exactly.
You know, whatever classes you have to take, because now I'm online. You know, and thank God I've worked for a nonprofit. You know, for Peer Justice, and they have a excellent executive director over there, Sasha Leggett, who I've really learned in the last year I worked there. I watch her and she educated me a whole lot on what needs to be done and has to be done. And even if people tell you that it's overdoing it, you keep doing it to cover yourself.
One of the suggestions, and I get this a lot, people say, I want to start a nonprofit.
Yeah.
So I say, if you're really passionate about starting a nonprofit, go work for a nonprofit.
Right.
Exactly.
So if you want to help, go help a helper.
Exactly.
Then while you're helping a helper, you learn how
Somebody's doing it the right way.
Or you learn how they operate.
Yes.
So
Yes.
don't tell me you want to create something to save the world
Yeah.
when all these people that are out here trying to save the world need volunteers. Because that's why nonprofits work, through volunteers, because you can't pay everybody.
Yeah.
So you need community and volunteers. But I digress.
Exactly. And that's the thing. So I'm glad I did have an opportunity to work there and watch somebody run a nonprofit.
Did you work or volunteer?
No, I worked. I started off as a fellow, and she hired me as a fellow back.
What's a fellow?
It's
For
a
Pure
fellow.
Justice.
you're working, you're learning how to be an organizer. You're learning how to, do campaigns and go to events and register people to vote. You're learning how to be a community advocate and organizer. And there's a proper way to do it.
Okay.
And so that's the start. I had the first 6 months, and she kept me on for another, and
So
I
you were being paid for that?
Yes, thank God, that they gave me an opportunity. Somebody saw something in me. And I'm very appreciative of that. And so I learned so much, and I said, oh my goodness, I was so uneducated. I didn't know nothing.
Right.
And so now it's like moving forward, I'm taking everything that I've learned from not just that organization, other organizations that I've been affiliated with too, and watching and seeing, okay, I've got to be this. This is a lot of work, and I didn't know that. So that's the thing right now before we leave. Like, please, if you're starting a nonprofit, get under somebody that's taking care of business the right way, and really
tax returns are required.
Yes.
I mean, it's so many things that are required. And if you're lucky enough to get a grant, you have to comply with the grant rules and regulations and the compliance.
And they're going to audit you.
And the
and
reporting.
I didn't even know that. See, that's stuff I didn't even know. Just keep doing the good work, Tracie. Just keep doing, turn the paperwork in.
Well, I mean, I don't want to disparage the Urban League, but they should have. If they gave you the grant and you were part of under their grant umbrella, they should have made sure the paperwork was right. They should have been in the office reading it.
Yeah.
Right. Well, they should, as they got it in, I think at some point they must have learned that. That's why they told her to go back and get those names.
Yes.
But she couldn't do it because she's just getting kids off the street.
Yeah.
I mean,
so when they went to fill in the information,
the girl working for her made it up, basically.
Yeah.
Right.
She just made it up, and that's the fraud. It wasn't intentional.
No.
But it was just trying to comply with something that was too late.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
So I don't know. I don't know how you fix a situation like that.
You don't get paid for what you.
Yeah, you
got
to get the money back. You got to get the money.
And
back.
that's why I said, well, can I just give it back? Because I followed the rules of the person that was sitting in front of me. I followed every rule they gave me. I didn't do anything different.
Right.
That's
But
why
she
they
didn't know
couldn't
what to
say.
do.
Well, that's
She
why they
didn't
couldn't
know.
come in and say I stole anything because
Right,
I followed the rules. And then the attempted theft was my paperwork was in the basement. The DA came in and went down in the basement, and my paperwork was inside of a guy named Reginald Johnson's paperwork. So I get charged with an attempted theft. I've never met this man to this day. If he walked in here right now, I wouldn't know who he was. And that's the thing about it. Therese Buse got on TV and said I was coercing with a guy. Oh, sorry, I love you. Thank you, sir. Called the person's name and said, my attorney, I heard my attorney, I came upstairs one day to his office, and I'm standing outside the office. He's on the phone with her. And he said, hey, Tracie don't know Reginald Johnson. She said, oh, I know, and started laughing.
We already agreed, because Vivian had been part of the criminal justice here in Harris County for how many years?
31.
So she said what she said, that it has been a time and an era.
Yeah, and we move forward. I understand that, but I just wanted people to explain that.
And it's still done like that today.
Yeah, but I'm still with 16 years for something, attempted theft. 16 years for an attempted theft? And you got people...
That was excessive. First time offense and a police officer.
And you got people that shooting people.
Did they offer you a plea?
Nothing. They wanted me to go to prison.
So you saying you had to go to trial? There was no.
I went to trial. No, she offered me 10 years, and I said no.
She didn't do it. She had to.
Well, I'm just educating.
Okay,
To let you know that you don't get convicted of 16
Well, they offered her 10
years.
years prison.
Right.
And I said no, I'm not taking nothing. I didn't do anything.
Right.
So I went to go to trial.
And there was a time, and hopefully it's not like that now, where people didn't get to defend themselves properly. So hopefully now that we have a public defender's office, they have the resources to do it.
Exactly.
They actually have investigators and staff to do it, and they can take on heavy cases like this. Well, I'm being told to wrap this up, so it looks like I didn't get to talk about Tracie in prison. We didn't get to go through half the things I wanted to go through.
Buying commissary in prison.
Buying commissary. Have she had to fight anybody off in prison? We didn't get to go through any of that tonight.
I got some
so we're going to beg her to come back and tell her prison stories.
Only.
And about redemption. Greatly, and so I know we got off on another track tonight because we just needed to go there, but thank you for watching Truth and Justice with Vivian King. I hope you learned something tonight. I did, and let's see you next time. Thank you for watching. Good night.
Yeah, check us out on Facebook.